The flood did not begin when the first rain fell. It began when the final separation was made. When Noah, his family, and the living creatures entered the ark, and the door was shut behind them. This is the account of what really happened during the flood of Noah, followed step by step according to the biblical record. In this episode, we will focus on the flood itself, the final days before it began, the entry into the ark, the closing of the door, the breaking open of the waters below, the rain from above, the 40 days and nights, the 150 days when the waters prevailed, and the long process of waiting until the earth was dry again. We will not rush through the familiar parts. We will follow the sequence carefully, because the timing is one of the most important details in the account. Many people remember the flood as a simple event. Rain came, the ark floated, and the waters eventually went down. But the text gives a much more structured timeline. It describes specific days, specific months, phases of rising water, phases of waiting, and a gradual restoration of the earth. This matters because the flood was not a single moment of destruction. It was a long event that unfolded in stages, and each stage changed the condition of the world. The central question is this: what actually happened between the moment the ark was sealed and the moment Noah finally stepped onto dry ground again? That is the path we will follow. We will look at what the text says happened first, what happened next, and how the world moved from warning to judgment to survival to restart. If you enjoy full biblical timelines explained clearly and step by step, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And before we continue, leave a comment. Where are you watching from? What time is it there right now? And what part of Noah's flood do you think people misunderstand the most? Now, we begin in the final days before the flood, when the ark was complete. The warning had reached its last interval, and the world outside still continued as usual. Act 1. The final days before the flood. In the final days before the flood, the narrative slows down and becomes more precise. The long period of preparation is ending, and a defined time frame is introduced. Noah is told that in 7 days, the flood will begin. This matters because it marks the transition from open-ended warning to a fixed point in time. Up to this moment, there has been opportunity for preparation and response. Now, the sequence moves toward completion. The instruction given to Noah at this stage is specific. He is told to enter the ark with his household and to bring with him the animals that had already been identified. The distinction between clean and unclean animals is repeated, with additional numbers for those designated as clean. This matters because it shows continuity in the instructions. What was defined earlier is now being carried out in full, without alteration. At this point, the ark is no longer under construction. It is complete and ready to function as intended. The structure that had been built over time now becomes the central element for survival. This matters because it marks a shift in purpose. The ark is no longer a project. It is about to become a closed environment separated from everything outside. As the 7-day period begins, the process of entry takes place. Noah, his sons, Ham, and Japheth along with their wives, move into the ark. This group has been consistently identified as the line through which humanity will continue. Their entry is not described as rushed or chaotic. It follows the same ordered pattern seen throughout the narrative. This matters because it reinforces that the process is controlled and deliberate. The animals also begin to enter. The text describes them coming in pairs, male and female, according to their kinds. This movement is not presented as something Noah organizes alone. Instead, it aligns with the earlier statement that they will come to him. This matters because it shows that the gathering of life into the ark is part of the same structured sequence, not an uncertain or incomplete process. During this period, the world outside the ark continues as it had before. There is no indication of immediate change in the environment. The sky has not yet opened, and the ground has not yet been affected. This matters because it highlights the contrast between what is about to happen and than what is currently visible. The conditions that will define the flood have not yet begun, even though the final stage is already in motion. The 7-day interval functions as a final boundary. It separates the period of preparation from the beginning of the event itself. Once this interval ends, the process will move into a phase that cannot be reversed or delayed. This matters because it defines the last moment where positioning determines outcome inside the ark or outside of it. At this stage, all elements are in place. The ark is complete, the occupants are entering, and the final countdown has begun. The next phase will focus on the completion of this entry, the closing of the ark, and the moment when the separation between inside and outside becomes final. As the 7-day interval continues, the process of entering the ark reaches completion. Noah and his family are already inside, and the animals have come in according to the instructions given. The structure that was once opened for entry is now filled with all that will be preserved. This matters because it brings the preparation phase to its final point. Nothing more is added, and nothing is left undefined. At this stage, the narrative emphasizes a critical action: the closing of the ark. The text states that the door is shut by God. This detail is significant because it marks a decisive boundary. Up to this moment, there's been a distinction between those who enter and those who remain outside. With the closing of the door, that distinction becomes permanent. This matters because it defines the moment when the outcome is no longer dependent on movement or decision. The separation is complete. The closing of the ark also marks the end of the visible process. From the outside, the structure is now sealed. From the inside, it becomes a contained environment, isolated from everything that is about to take place. This transition is critical. The ark is no longer part of the world, it is separated from it. This matters because everything that follows will occur under two completely different conditions: those inside the ark and those outside of it. Despite this, there is still no immediate change in the environment. The rain has not yet begun, and the ground remains as it was. This delay is important because it creates a final contrast between appearance and reality. From an external perspective, nothing has changed. But from a structural perspective, everything is already in motion. This matters because it shows that the beginning of the flood is not defined by the first drop of rain, but by the completion of separation. The narrative then provides a precise marker for what happens next. It states that in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, the flood begins. This level of detail anchors the event in a specific moment. This matters because it reinforces the structured nature of the sequence. The flood is not introduced gradually or without definition. It begins at a clearly identified point in time. At these stages, all preparation has ended. The ark is sealed, the occupants are inside, and the world outside continues without visible disruption. The next phase will describe what happens at the exact moment the flood begins, how the waters are released, and how the conditions of the earth change from stability to total upheaval. Act 2. The moment the flood begins. At the exact moment defined in the timeline, the flood begins not as a gradual shift that could be easily dismissed, but as a coordinated and irreversible change in the structure of the environment itself. The narrative does not describe a slow buildup or warning signs in the sky. Instead, it presents a sudden transition from stability to disruption, anchored to a specific day, month, and year in Noah's life. This matters because it establishes that the flood is not an undefined catastrophe, but a precisely timed event that begins at a fixed point. The description of how the flood begins is critical. It does not rely on a single source of water. Instead, two distinct mechanisms are activated at the same time. The fountains of the great deep are broken open, and the windows of heaven are opened. This dual origin changes how the event must be understood. It is not simply rain increasing beyond normal. Limits it is the release of water from both below and above, surrounding the earth from every direction. This matters because it explains how the scale of the flood is achieved. It is not dependent on one process, but on a combined system that begins simultaneously. The breaking open of the deep suggests a disruption beneath the surface, something that alters the ground itself. This is not described as a minor release, but as a force strong enough to change the stability of the earth. At the same time, the opening of the heavens introduces sustained rainfall that does not follow ordinary patterns. These two processes together create a condition where the environment begins to lose its previous form. This matters because it shows that the flood is not just water rising, it is the breakdown of the existing world structure. Rain begins to fall continuously, without interruption. The text specifies 40 days and 40 nights, but within that duration, there is no pause, no variation, and no relief. Day transitions into night, and night into day, with the same condition persisting. This matters because it creates a sense of continuity in the event. The flood is not experienced as a series of storms, it is experienced as a single, sustained state that does not stop. As the rain continues and the waters from below rise, the ground begins to lose its ability to support what had been built upon it. The land that once held cities, fields, and movement begins to give way under the increasing weight and saturation. This is not described through individual structures, but the implication is clear. Everything dependent on stable ground is now under pressure. This matters because it marks the beginning of the disappearance of the pre-flood world, not instantly, but progressively, as conditions worsen with each passing day. During this time, the Ark undergoes its own transition. For an extended period, it had remained fixed in place, a structure on dry ground, awaiting a purpose that had not yet begun. Now, as the waters rise, it begins to lift. The moment the Ark separates from the ground is critical. It marks the point where it fully becomes what it was designed to be, a vessel, sustained by the very forces that are overwhelming everything else. This matters because it confirms that the preparation phase was not theoretical. It was aligned exactly with what is now unfolding. Inside the Ark, the conditions remain controlled. There is no indication of external disruption affecting those within. The structure holds, the separation remains intact, and life continues within its boundaries. This contrast becomes more pronounced with each passing hour. Outside, the environment is losing form and stability. Inside, there is continuity and preservation. This matters because it defines the flood not only as destruction, but as separation between two completely different states of existence. As the days pass, the accumulation of water becomes impossible to ignore. What began as a sudden release now becomes an expanding condition. The level continues to rise, covering more of the land, removing distinctions between regions, and reducing the visible world to a single, changing surface. The longer this continues, the more the previous world becomes inaccessible, not just physically, but structurally. This matters because it shows that the flood is not only covering the world, it is replacing it with a new, temporary state. At Tistache, the flood is no longer beginning, it's establishing itself. The processes that were set in motion continue without interruption, and the direction of the event is clear. The next phase will follow this progression further, showing how the waters reach their full extent and how the world, as it existed before, disappears completely beneath them. As the 40 days and 40 nights continue without interruption, the flood moves from initial disruption to full domination of the environment. What began as a sudden release of water now becomes a sustained and overwhelming condition that defines everything outside the Ark. There is no return to previous stability, no pause in the process, and no visible boundary where the effects stop. This matters because it marks the point where the flood is no longer developing, it is now fully established. As the dominant state of the world, the waters continue to rise steadily, not in isolated areas, but across the entire surface of the earth. The narrative emphasizes that the increase is not partial or localized. It spreads outward and upward at the same time, gradually removing all distinctions between low ground and high ground. Valleys disappear first, then elevated regions, until even the highest points begin to lose their separation from the expanding waters. This matters because it shows that the flood is not simply covering land, it is erasing the structure of the landscape itself. The text describes the waters prevailing to such an extent that all the high hills under the whole heaven are covered. This is a decisive statement. It removes any remaining possibility of survival outside the ark, regardless of location or elevation. The idea of refuge through height is eliminated completely. This matters because it reinforces the total nature of the event. There is no alternative position that allows escape once the flood reaches this stage. As the waters continue to rise, they exceed even the highest elevations by a measurable margin. This detail is important because it confirms that the coverage is not superficial. It is not a temporary layer resting at the level of the land. It extends beyond it, ensuring that everything below is fully submerged. This matters because it completes the transition from a world defined by land to a world defined entirely by water. During this time, the consequences previously declared take full effect. All living creatures outside the ark, birds, livestock, wild animals, and humans are described as perishing. The narrative presents this in comprehensive terms, aligning with the earlier assessment of the world's condition. This matters because it shows that the outcome is consistent with the scale of the evaluation that preceded it. What had developed over generations is now brought to an end in a single, unified event. Inside the ark, however, the conditions remain stable and contained. The structure continues to float on the surface of the waters, rising as the water level increases. It does not resist the flood, it is sustained by it. This distinction is critical. The same force that removes everything else becomes the means of preservation for those within the ark. This matters because it highlights the purpose of the ark, not as a barrier against the flood, but as a vessel designed to exist within it. Time begins to lose its usual markers during this phase. Day follows night, and night follows day, but the conditions remain unchanged. The rain continues, the waters remain in motion, and the environment outside the ark offers no variation. This matters because it creates a sustained state rather than a sequence of events. The flood is experienced as continuity, not as a series of separate occurrences. After the initial 40 days of rainfall, the narrative introduces another time frame that extends the duration of the flood's dominance. The waters are said to prevail upon the earth for 150 days. This is a separate measurement from the rainfall itself. It indicates that even after the rain stops, the condition of total coverage remains. This matters because it shows that the flood is not defined only by its beginning, but by how long it maintains control over the environment. During this extended period, the world that existed before the flood is no longer accessible in any form. Structures, landscapes, and boundaries have all been removed. Beneath the surface, the progression that began with early generations, developed into structured societies, and eventually reached a point of complete corruption, has now reached its endpoint. This matters because it closes the cycle that began long before the flood itself. At these days, the flood has reached its full extent. There is no remaining land visible, no variation in the environment outside the ark, and no continuation of life beyond what has been preserved within it. The event has moved from beginning to completion in terms of coverage. The next phase will shift direction for the first time since the flood began, focusing on how the waters begin to recede, how the process of restoration starts, and how the world transitions from total submersion back towards stability. As the waters reach the point where all elevation is removed and the surface of the earth becomes a single continuous expanse, the flood enters a phase where its effects are no longer increasing in visibility, but deepening in permanence. What had once been a dynamic process of rising water now becomes a stable condition that holds everything beneath it. This matters because it marks the transition from escalation to consolidation. The flood is no longer advancing, it is established. During this phase, the idea of location loses its meaning. Before the flood, distinctions existed between regions, cities, mountains, and valleys. These differences defined how people lived, where they settled, and how movement occurred. Now, those distinctions are gone. The surface of the earth no longer provides reference points. This matters because it shows that the flood does not only remove life, remove structure, identity, and orientation. Inside the Ark, however, structure remains. The internal environment continues to function within defined boundaries. Space is organized, movement is contained, and life continues within limits that were established during the preparation phase. This contrast becomes more significant over time. Outside, there is no structure. Inside, everything depends on structure. This matters because it reinforces the purpose of the Ark as a controlled system within an uncontrolled world. Time continues to pass, but without the usual markers that define change. There is no sunrise over land, no visible horizon, no shift in terrain. The only continuity is the movement of the Ark upon the waters and the sustained condition outside. This creates a sense of suspension where progression exists in time, but not in visible transformation. This matters because it extends the experience of the flood beyond a moment into a prolonged state of existence. As the waters remain at their highest level, the earlier world is no longer just hidden, it is effectively erased from experience. There is no interaction with it, no visibility of it, and no immediate path back to it. This matters because it defines the completeness of the event. The flood does not leave remnants that can be accessed during this phase. Everything outside the Ark is removed from reach. At the same time, the Ark continues to function without failure. Its structure holds, its separation remains intact, and its purpose continues to be fulfilled. This ongoing stability is not emphasized through dramatic description, but through the absence of disruption. Nothing inside the Ark collapses, fails, or breaks. This matters because it confirms that the preparation phase accounted for the full duration of the flood, not just its beginning. This phase continues without visible transition, extending the period where the flood defines the entire environment. The next stage will introduce the first change in this conditioned moment when the waters begin to recede, and the direction of the event shifts for the first time since it began. After the extended period where the waters prevail without visible reduction, the narrative introduces a critical turning point. For the first time since the flood began, the direction of the event changes. The text states that God remembers Noah and all the living creatures within the Ark, and causes a wind to pass over the earth. This moment is not presented as a sudden reversal, but as the beginning of a gradual process. This matters because it marks the transition from sustained judgment to the initial movement toward restoration. The effect of this wind is not immediate visibility of land, but a shift in the behavior of the waters. The sources that had previously been active begin to close. The fountains of the deep are restrained, and the rain from heaven stops. This indicates that no additional water is entering the system. This matters because it establishes the first condition necessary for recovery, the cessation of increase. With no new water being added, the existing waters begin to recede. However, this process is slow and extended over time. The narrative does not describe a rapid drop in water levels, but a gradual withdrawal. This matters because it maintains the same structured pacing seen throughout the flood. Just as the waters rose in stages, they now recede in stages. During this phase, the Ark continues to float, but its movement begins to change. It is no longer being lifted by rising waters, but carried over a surface that is slowly lowering. The direction and motion are still not described in detail, reinforcing that control remains outside human influence. This matters because it keeps the focus on the process rather than on navigation or intervention. Eventually, the Ark comes to rest. The text provides a specific marker. In the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the Ark rests upon the mountains of Air. This is the first fixed position since the flood began. This matters because it introduces stability after a long period of movement. The Ark is no longer drifting, it has reached a point where it can remain in place. However, this does not mean that the Earth is immediately visible or habitable. The waters continue to recede gradually, and the land remains largely submerged. This distinction is important. The resting of the Ark marks the beginning of stabilization, not the completion of restoration. This matters because it reinforces that recovery, like destruction, unfolds over time. At T stage, the flood has completed its dominant phase and entered the early stage of withdrawal. The direction has changed, but the process is not yet complete. The next phase will follow this gradual recession, showing how the Earth begins to reappear and how the conditions shift from total coverage to partial visibility. Act T3, the waters prevail and time inside the Ark. After the flood reaches its full extent, and every visible boundary of the Earth disappears beneath the waters, the narrative enters a phase that feels almost suspended in time. The violent beginning, the breaking open of the deep, the opening of the heavens. The relentless rain has already passed. What remains is not chaos in motion, but a world that has been entirely overtaken and now exists in a single, unchanging state. This matters because the flood is no longer an event unfolding, it has become the environment itself. The text states that the waters prevail upon the earth for 150 days. This is not simply a continuation of what came before, but a distinct phase where nothing visibly progresses. The waters do not continue to rise in a dramatic way, and they do not begin to fall. They hold their position, covering everything completely, without variation. This matters because it transforms the flood from a moment of destruction into a prolonged condition of total dominance. The world before the flood is not in the process of disappearing anymore, it is gone, and what replaces it does not change. From inside the Ark, this phase would not be defined by events, but by repetition. Time continues, but without markers that indicate movement toward an end. There are no signals from outside, no change in sound, no shift in light that suggests progress. Day and night still alternate, but the meaning of those transitions begins to lose its clarity. Light does not reveal anything new, and darkness does not conceal anything different. This matters because it creates a sense of duration that is difficult to measure. Time is passing, but it is not leading anywhere visible. The Ark itself continues to float, but its movement offers no direction. It rises and settles with the motion of the waters, carried by forces that cannot be seen or controlled. There is no indication of where it is going, or if it is going anywhere at all. This matters because it removes the idea of destination from the experience. Survival is no longer about reaching a place. It is about remaining within the only place that still exists. Inside the Ark, the contrast becomes more profound with each passing day. Within its walls, there is structure, limitation, and continuity. Outside, there is only the uninterrupted presence of water. The boundaries of the Ark define everything that can be experienced. Space is finite, movement is contained, and every action happens within a closed system. This matters because it turns the Ark into more than a vessel. It becomes an entire world in itself, separate from everything that once existed. The presence of life inside the Ark introduces a different kind of complexity. The animals, each according to their kind, are confined within designated spaces. They do not move freely across land, and they do not follow natural patterns of migration or territory. Everything is contained, regulated, and dependent on the structure that holds them. This matters because it shows that survival during this phase is not natural. In the usual sense, it is sustained through an artificial environment that must remain stable over time. Noah and his family exist within this same system. There are no instructions recorded during this phase, no new directives to follow, and no visible signs to interpret. The role they now occupy is not to act, but to remain. This matters because it represents a shift from preparation to endurance. Everything that could be done has already been done. What remains is to continue within the conditions that have been established. As the days extend into weeks and weeks into months, the absence of change becomes the defining experience. There's no indication that the waters are decreasing, no sign that land is near, and no confirmation that the situation will end soon. This matters because it introduces a prolonged state of uncertainty, not about survival within the Ark, but about what exists beyond it. The world outside is no longer just inaccessible, it is undefined. There is no way to measure its condition, no way to observe its state, and no way to confirm whether anything remains beneath the waters. The flood has not only covered the earth, it has removed every point of reference that once made the world understandable. This matters because it completes the separation between what was and what is. At these days, the flood has reached a form of stillness. Not the stillness of calm, but the stillness of total control, where nothing changes because everything has already been overtaken. The ark continues to float within this unchanging expanse, carrying within it the only continuation of life. The next phase will deepen this experience further, showing how extended duration without visible change begins to shape perception, expectation, and the sense of time itself inside the ark. As the 150 days continue, the defining characteristic of this phase becomes the weight of uninterrupted time. The initial violence of the flood has already passed, but what replaces it is not relief, it is continuity without variation. The waters remain at their highest level. The ark remains surrounded on all sides, and nothing in the external environment suggests movement toward an end. This matters because the experience of the flood is no longer defined by what is happening, but by how long it continues without visible change. Inside the ark, the rhythm of existence becomes repetitive and contained. There are no external references to measure progress. The horizon does not change, the landscape does not reappear, and the sound of water remains constant. The distinction between one day and another begins to blur, not because time stops, but because it no longer produces visible results. This matters because it creates a sense of duration that stretches beyond ordinary perception. Time is still passing, but it is not leading to anything that can be seen. The ark itself continues to move, but without direction. It rises and settles with the motion of the waters, responding to forces that cannot be predicted or controlled. There is no indication of navigation, no attempt to steer, and no way to determine position. This matters because it removes the idea of progress through movement. The ark is not traveling toward something, it is being sustained within something. Within this enclosed environment, the importance of structure becomes more evident with each passing day. The divisions inside the ark spaces assigned for animals, areas for storage, and places for human activity are no longer just organizational features. They are essential for maintaining balance over time. Every part of the structure contributes to stability, and any disruption would affect the entire system. This matters because survival during this phase depends not on external conditions, but on internal order. The presence of so many living beings in a confined space introduces constant demand. Animals require feeding, care, and containment. Movement must be controlled, and resources must be managed carefully to last through an unknown duration. Although the narrative does not describe these actions in detail, their necessity is implied by the scale of what is inside the ark. This matters because it shows that endurance during this phase is active, not passive. Life continues, but it must be sustained deliberately. For Noah and his family, this period would be defined by consistency rather than change. There are no new instructions given, no signals that indicate what will happen next, and no confirmation that the situation outside is improving. The role they now occupy is one of maintenance, continuing what has already been set in place without knowing how long it will be required. This matters because it reinforces the shift from preparation to endurance. The focus is no longer on what to do next, but on continuing what has already been done. Outside the ark, the world remains completely submerged. There are no visible breaks in the water, no signs of land emerging, and no variation in the environment. The waters do not move toward reduction. They hold their position. This matters because it confirms that the flood has not yet begun to reverse. It is still fully dominant, maintaining the condition it established. The longer this phase continues, the more complete the separation becomes between the ark and the world that existed before. The previous environment is no longer just hidden, it is removed from experience entirely. There is no way to interact with it, observe it, or even confirm its condition. This matters because it shows that the flood has not only changed the world, it has replaced it as the only reality that exists outside the ark. As time extends further, the absence of change begins to define expectation itself. there is no clear indication of when this condition will end, no visible sign that the waters will recede, and no external marker that suggests transition is near. This matters because it creates a prolonged state where endurance must continue without confirmation of progress. At Tistes, the flood is not intensifying, but it is not diminishing either. It remains constant, unchanging, and complete. The next phase will introduce the first shift in this conditioned moment when the direction of the flood begins to change, even before that change becomes visible from within the ark. After an extended period where nothing in the external environment suggests change, the narrative introduces a turning point that is not immediately visible, but structurally decisive. The text states that God remembers Noah and all the living creatures that are with him in the ark. This statement does not imply that Noah had been forgotten in a literal sense, but it marks a shift in the sequence of events. What had been sustained without variation now begins to move toward reversal. This matters because it is the first indication that the flood will not remain in its current state indefinitely. The change begins quietly. There is no sudden lowering of the waters, no immediate reappearance of land, and no dramatic signal that the phase has ended. Instead, a wind passes over the earth. This detail is subtle, but important. It indicates movement within the environment that had previously been static in its dominance. This matters because it introduces a process rather than an instant transformation. The reversal of the flood will unfold gradually, just as its rise did. At the same time, the sources that had sustained the flood begin to close. The fountains of the great deep are restrained, and the rain from heaven stops. This does not immediately change what can be seen from inside the ark, but it changes the direction of the entire system. No additional water is entering. This matters because it establishes the necessary condition for reduction. Without the continued input of water, the flood can begin to recede. Even with this shift, the waters do not withdraw quickly. The process is measured and extended, reflecting the same structured pacing that defined the earlier phases. The level begins to decrease slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. From inside the ark, this would not be immediately noticeable. The environment still appears unchanged, and the surface of the water continues to surround the ark in every direction. This matters because it reinforces that transformation often begins before it can be observed. As the days continue, the gradual reduction of the waters begins to affect the movement of the ark. It is no longer being carried by rising levels, but supported by a surface that is slowly lowering. This shift does not produce sudden motion or instability. Instead, it leads toward a moment of stillness, first since the flood began. That moment arrives when the ark comes to rest. The text provides a precise marker. In the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rests upon the mountains of Ararat. This is the first fixed position recorded since the ark was lifted from the ground. This matters because it marks the end of continuous movement. For the first time since the flood began, the ark is no longer drifting, it is stationary. However, this stability does not yet indicate that the flood has ended. The waters still cover much of the earth, and the surrounding environment remains largely unchanged. The ark rests on a point beneath the surface, not on exposed land. This matters because it distinguishes between stabilization and restoration. The process has shifted direction, but it is far from complete. From within the ark, this moment may not be immediately recognizable as a turning point. The movement has ceased, but the environment still appears the same. There is no visible land, no clear horizon, and no indication that the end is near. This matters because it shows that even significant changes in the process do not always produce immediate evidence. As time continues, the waters keep receding slowly, moving toward a state where the earth will begin to reappear. The transition has begun, but it unfolds at a pace that requires continued endurance. The next phase will follow this progression further, revealing the first visible signs of land and the gradual return of structure to a world that had been entirely submerged. After the ark comes to rest upon the mountains beneath the surface, the narrative continues to move forward in the same slow, measured rhythm that has defined the entire flood. the direction has already changed. The waters are no longer increasing, but the transformation of the environment is still unfolding gradually. What matters now is not the moment of change, but the process that follows it, as the world moves from total submersion toward visibility again. The text marks this progression carefully. Time continues to pass in defined intervals, and only after additional months do the first visible signs appear. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains become visible. This detail is significant because it represents the first external reference point that has existed since the flood covered everything. For the first time, the surface of the water is no longer the only visible reality. Structure begins to return. Even so, this moment does not immediately lead to action. The appearance of mountaintops does not mean the earth is ready, nor does it signal that the process is complete. The pattern of waiting continues. This matters because it reinforces the principle that visibility does not equal readiness. The world is beginning to re-emerge, but it is not yet restored. After a further period of waiting, Noah begins to test the conditions outside the ark. He opens a window and sends out a raven. The raven moves back and forth, not returning in the same way as other birds will. This detail suggests that while there may be places to rest, the environment is still unstable and not fully suitable for sustained life. This matters because it shows that early signs of change do not yet provide certainty. Noah then sends out a dove, a different kind of bird, one that depends more directly on stable ground and vegetation. The dove returns, unable to find a place to rest. This confirms that, despite the visibility of land, the surface is still not ready for habitation. This matters because it emphasizes that the process of restoration includes stages that must be completed before life can continue outside the ark. Noah waits again, allowing more time to pass before sending the dove a second time. This time, the dove returns with an olive leaf. This is a decisive moment. It indicates not only that land is exposed, but that vegetation is beginning to recover. Life is returning to the earth, not in full, but in measurable form. This matters because it marks the transition from exposure to regeneration. Still, Noah does not act immediately. The pattern remains consistent observation, waiting, confirmation. He sends the dove a third time, and this time it does not return. This absence carries meaning. It suggests that stable conditions now exist outside, enough for the dove to remain. This matters because it signals that the environment has moved beyond initial recovery into sustained viability. Even with this confirmation, the narrative does not rush forward. Noah removes the covering of the ark and looks upon the surface of the ground, observing that it has dried. Yet he still waits until a direct instruction is given before leaving. This detail is important because it maintains the consistent pattern seen throughout the entire account. Action follows. Confirmation, not assumption. At the stasis, the flood has completed its full cycle. It has risen, prevailed, stabilized, and begun to withdraw. The world that was once entirely covered has started to reappear, and the first signs of life have returned. The ark, which once floated in a world without structure, now rests in a world where structure is slowly being restored. The next phase will move beyond waiting and observation into action. The moment when Noah and all that is with him leave the ark, and the transition from survival to reestablishment begins. Act 4, the exit, and the first steps on a restored earth. After the long period of waiting marked by silence, repetition, and gradual change, the moment of transition finally arrives, but not through observation alone. Even after the ground appears dry, even after the dove does not return, Noah does not move on his own. The pattern that has defined the entire sequence continues. Action follows instruction. This matters because it shows that the end of the flood is not determined by visible signs alone, but by a defined moment within the structure of the narrative. The instruction is direct. Noah is told to go out from the ark, along with his family and every living creature that is with him. This command marks the end of confinement and the beginning of re-entry into a world that has been entirely the ark, which had functioned as a complete and self-contained environment for an extended period, is no longer the only place where life can exist. This matters because it marks the transition from preservation to The exit from the Ark is not described as chaotic or rushed. It follows the same order that defined the entry: Noah, his sons, their wives, and then the animals each, according to their kind leave, the structure that had sustained them. This continuity matters because it reinforces that the process from beginning to end has been structured and controlled. Nothing occurs out of sequence, and nothing is left undefined. As they step out, the environment they enter is not the same as the one that existed before the flood. The ground is dry, but it is newly revealed. There are no cities, no cultivated fields, no established systems. Everything that had once defined the world has been removed. This matters because it shows that the exit from the Ark is not a return, it is the beginning of something entirely new. The scale of this transition is difficult to fully measure from within the narrative, but its implications are clear. The entire human population has been reduced to a single family. All animal life outside the Ark has been replaced by those that were preserved within it. The world has not only been cleared, it has been reset to a point where everything must begin again. At the same time, the natural environment, though restored in form, is still in the early stages of recovery. Vegetation has begun to return, but it is not yet fully developed. The systems that sustain life growth, reproduction, cycles of weather are present, but they are restarting from a minimal state. This matters because it shows that restoration is not immediate fullness. It begins at a foundational level and builds over time. Noah's first action after leaving the Ark is deliberate and immediate. He builds an altar before establishing shelter, before organizing resources, before addressing the practical needs of survival. He performs an act that acknowledges what has taken place. This matters because it defines the orientation of the new beginning. The first act in the restored world is not functional, it is intentional. From the animals designated as clean, offerings are made upon the altar. This action connects directly to earlier distinctions that had been preserved throughout the flood. It also demonstrates that the preparation before the flood included provision for this exact moment. This matters because it shows continuity across all phases of the narrative, from preparation to survival to rest. At this stage, the flood has ended in terms of its physical impact, but its significance is still unfolding. The world has been restored in form, but its structure, direction, and future are about to be defined through what follows. The next phase will examine the response to this first act after the flood and the statements that establish the conditions of the world moving forward. After Noah builds the altar and offers the burnt offerings, the narrative introduces a response that defines the structure of the world moving forward. The text describes the offering as producing a pleasing aroma, followed by a declaration that is not directed only at Noah, but at the future of the earth itself. This moment is significant because it establishes a new framework after the flood, one that acknowledges what has happened, but sets limits on what will happen again. The statement that follows is precise. It declares that the ground will not be cursed again in the same way because of humanity, even though the inclination of the human heart is acknowledged as unchanged. This detail is critical. It confirms that the flood did not alter human nature itself. The conditions that led to the flood are recognized as still present within humanity. This matters because it shows that the reset of the world was not a reset of human inclination. The environment has changed, but the internal condition remains. Despititis. A decision is made that affects the future of the entire system. The text establishes that as long as the earth remains, cycles such as seed time and harvest, cold and hot summer and winter, and day and night will continue without interruption. This introduces stability at a fundamental level. Before the flood, the world reached a point where disruption became total. Now, a boundary is set, certain patterns will not cease again. This matters because it provides a predictable structure within which life can continue. This declaration also marks a shift in how the world will function. The pre-flood world ended in complete removal. The post-flood world is defined by continuity, even in the presence of imperfection. This matters because it establishes that future developments will not lead to the same type of global reset. The system will continue, even as human behavior continues to develop within it. At these days, the narrative moves from response to instruction. Noah and his sons are addressed directly, and the command that was originally given at the beginning of human history is repeated: to be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. This repetition is important because it connects the new world to the original purpose. Despite everything that has happened, the function of human life remains the same. However, the context in which this command is given is different. The world has been reset, but it is not identical to what existed before. The instruction is now given after the flood, within a framework that includes defined boundaries and an awareness of what has already occurred. This matters because it shows that the new beginning carries with it the memory and structure of the past. Another change is introduced in the relationship between humans and animals. The text states that fear and dread of humans will fall upon all living creatures. This marks a shift from earlier descriptions, where this relationship is not defined in the same way. Now, there is a clear separation, and the interaction between humans and animals is altered. This matters because it reflects a change in the structure of the natural world after the flood. Dietary instructions are also expanded. Humans are now permitted to eat animals, with the restriction that blood is not to be consumed. This introduces both allowance and limitation. It shows that the new world includes defined boundaries within everyday life. This matters because it reinforces that the post-flood environment is not only restored, it is structured with specific rules. At this point, the world has been reestablished in form, and its foundational patterns have been defined. The next phase will deepen this structure, introducing further boundaries and a formal covenant that will define the limits of future events and the continuity of life on Earth. As the foundational structure of the new world is established through instruction, the narrative moves deeper into defining the boundaries that will govern human life moving forward. The command to multiply and fill the earth has already been given, and the relationship between humans and animals has been redefined. Now, the focus shifts to something more precise: the value of human life itself and the consequences tied to it. A direct statement is introduced regarding blood and life. It is declared that lifeblood must not be consumed, because life itself is tied to it. This is not only a dietary restriction, but a conceptual boundary. It establishes the life is not interchangeable or without distinction. This matters because it sets a limit that reflects a deeper structure. Life is recognized as something that cannot be treated casually or without consequence. From this point, the instruction becomes even more specific. It is stated that whoever sheds human blood will be held accountable. This introduces a principle that had not been formally defined before the flood. In the earlier world, violence spread without a structured system to restrain it, eventually becoming one of the defining conditions that led to its destruction. Now, a boundary is established directly in response to that history. This matters because it shows that the new world includes mechanisms intended to prevent the same level of unchecked development. This instruction is not presented as a suggestion, but as a defining element of the new structure. Human life is set apart in a way that requires accountability when it is taken. The reason given is tied to the origin of humanity, being made in the image of God. This matters because it provides the basis for the boundary. The value assigned to human life is not arbitrary. It is connected to its origin. At this step, the structure of the new world becomes more complete. It includes purpose, provision, and now defined limits regarding behavior. The environment has been restored, but it is not left without direction. The instructions given create a framework within which humanity will develop again, but under different conditions than before the flood. Following this, the narrative introduces the formal establishment of a covenant. While earlier declarations defined patterns and instructions, this covenant defines a lasting agreement that extends beyond Noah and his immediate family. It includes all future generations and every living creature that came out of the ark. This matters because it expands the scope from immediate survival to long-term continuity. The central statement of the covenant is clear. Never again will all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again will a flood destroy the earth. This is a defining boundary. It does not eliminate judgment or consequence in other forms, but it establishes that the specific type of global destruction that has just occurred will not be repeated. This matters because it changes the structure of expectation for the future. A sign is then introduced to accompany this covenant, the rainbow set in the clouds. This detail is important because it connects the sign to the same environment in which the flood occurred. Clouds, which once represented the release of water that covered the earth, now carry a sign that represents restraint. This matters because it transforms the meaning of a natural phenomenon into a recurring reminder of limitation. The function of the sign is also defined. Whenever clouds gather and the rainbow appears, it serves as a marker of the covenant. This is not a one-time event, but a repeating occurrence that can be observed across generations. This matters because it ensures that the memory of the flood is not dependent only on transmission of words. It is embedded within the ongoing experience of the natural world. At T-stage, the new world is not only restored, it is structured, defined, and bound by a covenant that sets limits on future events. The next phase will move from these formal declarations back to the immediate reality of Noah and his family, showing how life begins to develop again and how human behavior continues within this newly established framework. With the covenant established and the structure of the new world clearly defined, the narrative shifts back from universal declarations to the immediate reality of human life beginning again. The flood is ended, the earth has been restored in form, and the boundaries for future development have been set. Now, the focus returns to Noah and his family as a starting point for everything that will follow. The text identifies Noah's son Shem, Ham, and Japheth as the source of all future populations on the earth. This statement is simple, but its implications are extensive. It means that the entire post-flood world will develop from a single origin point. Every group, every nation, and every line of descent will trace back to this moment. This matters because it establishes continuity from the flood into everything that follows. At T-stage, life begins again in practical terms. Noah becomes a man of the soil and plants a vineyard. This detail marks the reintroduction of agriculture, one of the foundational elements of human society. It shows that the processes that existed before the flood, cultivation, growth, and reliance on the land, are now being re-established. This matters because it connects the new world to the functions of the old, even though the structure around them has changed. However, the narrative quickly introduces a moment that reveals something deeper. Noah drinks from the wine produced from the vineyard and becomes intoxicated, lying uncovered within his tent. This is the first recorded incident of its kind after the flood, and it carries significance beyond the action itself. It demonstrates that, despite the reset of the environment and the establishment of new boundaries, human behavior itself has not been fundamentally altered. This matters because it confirms what was stated earlier as the inclination of the human heart remains. The response to this situation introduces a contrast between Noah's sons. Ham observes his father's condition and communicates it to his brothers in a way that exposes the situation. Shem and Japheth, however, respond differently. They take a garment, walk backward, and cover their father without looking at him. This distinction matters because it highlights different responses to the same event, one that exposes and one that preserves. When Noah becomes aware of what has happened, he speaks and responds, issuing statements that affect future generations. These statements are not limited to the immediate moment, they extend forward, shaping the trajectory of the lines that will come from his sons. This matters because it shows that actions in this new world continue to produce consequences that go beyond the present, influencing what will develop over time. At this point, the narrative makes something clear. The flood has reset the world, but it has not removed the patterns of human behavior. The same potential for action, choice, and consequence continues to exist. The difference now is that these actions take place within a structured world, one defined by boundaries, covenant, and continuity. The earth is once again open. Life is expanding from a single point, and the conditions for growth have been restored. But the direction of that growth will still depend on the decisions that are made within this new framework. The flood has changed the environment, but it has not removed the need for structure, accountability, and defined limits. At this stage, the transition is complete. The flood has ended, the world has been restored, and the foundation for future development has been set. The next phase will move beyond this immediate beginning and follow how humanity begins to expand again, how groups form, and how the direction of the new world unfolds over time. Act 5. The world. After the flood begins to expand again. After the flood has fully receded, and the world has been restored to a condition where life can begin again, the narrative enters a phase that feels quieter, but no less significant. There is no sudden explosion of activity, no immediate transformation into complex societies. Instead, everything begins slowly, almost imperceptibly, from a single point. This matters because the new world does not emerge fully formed, it grows, step by step, from what survived. At this stage, humanity exists as one family, but that condition carries within it the potential for everything that will follow. Noah, his sons, and their families are not only survivors, they are the origin of all future generations. Every expansion, every settlement, every division that will come later begins here, in a world that has been emptied and reset. This matters because it establishes that what follows is not disconnected from what came before it. It's a continuation under new conditions. The environment they step into is both familiar and entirely new. The ground is dry. The cycles of nature have been restored, and vegetation has begun to return. Yet nothing is arranged. Nothing is cultivated at scale, and nothing reflects the developed world that existed before the flood. There are no cities, no established systems, no inherited structures to build upon. This matters because it shows that the world is not being resumed, it is being rebuilt from the beginning. Time begins to move forward again in a different way. During the flood, time was defined by endurance and waiting, marked by the absence of change. Now, time begins to produce visible results again. Growth returns to the land, cycles begin to stabilize, and the conditions necessary for expansion start to take hold. This matters because it marks the transition from survival to development, from preservation to progression. As generations begin to form, the process of multiplication unfolds gradually. Familias grow, children are born, and over time those children form their own families. This expansion is not immediate dispersion across the entire Earth. It is concentrated at first, with groups remaining relatively close, sharing space, language, and experience. This matters because it shows that expansion begins with proximity before it leads to separation. During this early phase, memory still plays a role. The flood is not a distant story, it is a recent event, carried by those who lived through it. The knowledge of what happened, why it happened, and how it unfolded would still be present in the first generations after it. This matters because it suggests that the beginning of the new world is shaped not only by instruction, but by experience. The past is not forgotten, it's still close. At the same time, the patterns of human behavior begin to re-emerge. The world has been reset, but human nature has not been altered. The same capacity for choice, direction, and influence exists as before. This matters because it introduces the possibility that the new world could follow a similar trajectory, even within the boundaries that have been established. As the population increases, movement begins to extend outward. Groups start to explore beyond their immediate surroundings, gradually occupying new areas. This movement is not forced at first, it develops naturally as the need for space and resources grows. This matters because it shows that expansion is driven by necessity as well as by instruction. With movement comes differentiation. Over time, groups begin to take on distinct characteristics based on where they settle, how they live, and how they organize themselves. This process is slow, but it is inevitable. Families become clans. Clans become larger groupings, and those groupings begin to form the early structure of what will later be recognized as nations. This matters because it explains how diversity begins to emerge from a single origin. Yet, at this stage, something else is also happening. Despite the command to fill the earth, the expansion is not yet complete. There is still a tendency toward remaining together, toward maintaining unity rather than full dispersion. This matters because it sets the stage for what comes next, a moment where humanity chooses concentration over expansion and attempts to define its own direction rather than continue the one that was given. The world is growing, life is multiplying, and structure is beginning to form. But the direction of that growth is about to be challenged by a decision that will reshape how humanity spreads across the earth. As the generations continue to multiply and the population begins to grow beyond a single extended family, the structure of human life starts to take on a more defined shape. What began as a shared origin slowly moves toward differentiation, but not immediately through separation. Instead, the early phase of expansion carries a strong tendency toward unity, shared space, shared language, and shared direction. This matters because the world is growing, but it is not yet dividing. The narrative clarifies this condition with a defining statement. The whole earth had one language and the same words. This is not simply a linguistic detail, it is a structural condition that shapes how humanity operates at this stage. Communication is direct, coordination is effortless, and collective decisions can be made without resistance caused by difference. This matters because it creates the conditions for large-scale unity, something that did not exist in the same way before the flood. As the population grows, movement begins again, but now with a different dynamic. Instead of spreading outward in all directions, groups begin to move together, eventually settling in a single region. The text identifies this location as a plain in the land of Shinar. This decision is important. It represents a shift from expansion to concentration, from filling the earth to remaining in one place. This matters because it directly contrasts with the earlier instruction to disperse. The environment of the plain provides the conditions for settlement. It is suitable for building, for organizing, and for sustaining a growing population in one location. Over time, what was once a temporary gathering becomes a permanent decision. This matters because it marks the beginning of a collective direction, one that is chosen rather than commanded. Within this unified group, a new level of coordination begins to emerge. The people develop a shared approach to construction, using bricks instead of stone and bitumen instead of mortar. This detail is more than technical, it reflects planning, adaptation, and the ability to standardize methods across a large group. This matters because it shows that unity is not passive. It enables action at a scale that would not be possible otherwise. From this point, intention becomes clear. The people decide to build a city and a tower with a specific goal in mind. They express the desire to make a name for themselves and to avoid being scattered across the face of the earth. This statement is central to understanding what is happening. It reveals that the decision to remain unified is not accidental, it is deliberate. This matters because it shows a shift in direction. The command to fill the earth is known, but it is not being followed. The construction of the city represents permanence. It is an attempt to establish identity in one place, rather than through movement. The tower, reaching upward, represents ambition beyond simple survival or settlement. It reflects a desire to define position, influence, and recognition through visible achievement. This matters because it parallels earlier patterns seen before the flood, where human action began to shape direction independently. At T-stage, the world is no longer just growing, it is organizing around a shared intention. Unity, which began as a natural result of a common origin, is now being reinforced as a chosen structure. This matters because it creates the conditions for a significant shift. When a unified population moves in a direction that contrasts with its original instruction, the outcome affects not just individuals, but the entire system. The next phase will examine how this unified effort is evaluated, what response it produces, and how that response reshapes the structure of the world by introducing division where unity once existed. As the unified population settles in the plain of Shinar and begins the construction of the city and the tower, the narrative shifts from description to evaluation. Up to this point, everything has unfolded through human initiative, movement, settlement, planning, and construction. Now, the direction of that initiative is examined. This matters because the significance of what is happening is not only in the action itself, but in what that action represents within the broader structure. The intention behind the construction is clearly stated: to make a name and to prevent dispersion. These two elements define the purpose of the project. It is not simply about building a structure, it is about establishing identity and control over direction. This matters because it directly contrasts with the earlier command to fill the earth. The choice being made is not neutral. It is a decision to remain unified rather than to expand. The tower itself becomes the central symbol of this intention. Its height is emphasized, described as reaching toward the heavens. This is not presented as a literal measurement alone, but as an expression of ambition. It reflects a collective effort to create something that defines position and presence on a scale that can be seen and recognized. This matters because it shows that the project is not only practical, it is symbolic. At these stages, the narrative introduces a different perspective. It states that God comes down to see the city and the tower that the people are building. This shift is important because it frames the event within a broader context. The construction is no longer viewed only from within the human effort, it is iboat, in relation to the structure that governs the entire sequence. The conclusion drawn from this observation focuses on unity. It is noted that the people are one, and that they share a single language. Because of this, nothing they plan to do will be restrained from them. This statement does not evaluate the technical achievement of the tower, it evaluates the condition that makes it possible. This matters because it identifies unity as the key factor enabling large-scale action. The response that follows is not directed at the structure itself, but at the condition that sustains it. Instead of stopping the building through direct force or destruction, the ability to communicate is altered. Language is confused so that people can no longer understand one another. This matters because it addresses the foundation of the project. Without shared language, coordination breaks down, and the unified effort cannot continue. The effect is immediate and structural. The work stops, not because the materials are removed or the tower collapses, but because the people can no longer function as a single coordinated group. This matters because it shows that the interruption comes from within the system rather than from outside pressure. As communication breaks down, the unity that had been intentionally preserved begins to dissolve. Groups can no longer operate together in the same way, and separation becomes necessary. This leads directly to dispersion. The very outcome that had been avoided becomes unavoidable. This matters because it completes the reversal of the earlier decision. The place is named Babel, reflecting the confusion that occurred there. This naming is not only descriptive, it becomes a marker within the narrative that explains how the world transitioned from a unified population to a divided one. This matters because it connects the event to everything that follows. At these days, the structure of the world has been reshaped again. Humanity is no longer unified in language or location. The expansion that had been resisted is now enforced through division. The next phase will follow this dispersion, showing how groups spread across the earth and how the diversity of nations begins to take form from this point forward. After the moment at Babel, the direction of human development changes once again, but this time in a way that cannot be reversed. What had been a unified population, capable of acting together with a single language and shared intention, is now divided at its most fundamental level. Communication breaks down, coordination collapses, and the effort to remain concentrated in one place becomes impossible to sustain. This matters because it does not simply interrupt the project, it restructures the entire trajectory of human expansion. The dispersion that follows is not described as chaotic in detail, but its effect is clear. Groups begin to separate, not by gradual choice alone, but by necessity. Without shared language, large-scale unity cannot continue. What had once been a single coordinated population now becomes multiple smaller groups, each limited by its ability to communicate internally, but not externally. This matters because it transforms how humanity spreads across the earth. Expansion is no longer resisted, it becomes unavoidable. As these groups move outward, the process of differentiation accelerates. What had already begun through early expansion now becomes more defined. Language becomes a boundary, shaping identity, culture, and organization within each group. This matters because it creates the foundation for diversity. The differences that will later define nations begin here, not as random developments, but as a direct result of this division. The earlier command to fill the earth is now fulfilled, but not in the way it was originally resisted. Instead of a unified movement outward, dispersion occurs through fragmentation. Each group carries with it a portion of the original population, but develops independently from that point forward. This matters because it shows that the outcome aligns with the original directive, even though the path to that outcome has been altered. The narrative then reinforces this development through structured genealogies. The descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth are traced into families, clans, and eventually nations, each associated with specific regions. This organization matters because it provides a framework for understanding how the world becomes populated. The expansion is not undefined, it follows lines of descent that can be traced and connected. Within this structure, certain figures begin to stand out, not yet as central to the narrative, but as indicators of emerging patterns. Leadership, settlement, and organization continue to develop, but now within separated groups rather than a unified system. This matters because it shows that human development continues, but under new conditions shaped by division. At the same time, the memory of the flood and the event at Babel would still exist within these early generations. These are not distant stories, they are part of the recent past, carried through those who experienced them directly or through those who were close to them. This matters because it suggests that early human development after Babel occurs with awareness of both unity and division, of both destruction and restoration. As the world continues to expand in this new structure, the narrative prepares for another shift in focus. Up to this point, it has followed humanity as a whole from unity to division to dispersion. Now it begins to narrow again, returning to a specific lineage that will become central to what follows. The expansion has taken place, the world has been divided, and nations have begun to form. But from within this growing diversity, one line will be selected, and through that line, the next stage of the narrative will unfold. Act 6. A new direction begins. The call of Abram. After the dispersion at Babel and the formation of nations across the earth, the narrative shifts once again from a broad, global perspective back to a focused line. Humanity is now divided, languages are separated, and groups are established in different regions. The expansion that began after the flood has taken form, but instead of continuing to follow all nations equally, the account narrows its attention to one specific lineage. This matters because it marks a transition from general human history to a targeted progression that will define what comes next. The text begins tracing the line of Shem in a structured way, connecting generations step by step. Names follow one another in sequence, forming a clear chain that leads forward through time. This genealogy is not just to record it, it's a framework. It links the post-flood world to a specific individual who will become central to the next phase. This matters because it provides continuity. The story does not reset. Again, it continues through a defined path. As the generations progress, a subtle change becomes noticeable. Lifespans begin to shorten compared to those before and immediately after the flood. While still extended, they no longer reach the same lengths seen in earlier figures. This matters because it indicates a gradual shift in human conditions. The narrative does not explain the cause, but the pattern is consistent. It marks a transition in how life unfolds over time. Eventually, the genealogy leads to a man named Abram. At this point, the structure changes. The narrative moves from listing names to describing events. Abram is no longer just a link in a chain, he becomes the focal point. This matters because it signals that what follows will not be a general account, but a detailed sequence centered on a single individual. Abram is introduced within a family context. His father, Terah, begins a journey from Ur of the Chaldeans toward the land of Canaan. But the journey does not reach its intended destination. Instead, the family settles in Haran. This detail is important because it shows that movement has already begun, but remains incomplete. This matters because it sets the stage for a continuation that will require a new direction. Within this introduction, a key detail is presented about Abram's household. His wife, Sarai, is unable to have children. This is not presented as a temporary condition, but as a defining reality. This matters because it introduces tension at the very beginning. In a narrative where lineage and continuation are central, the absence of a child creates a direct contradiction to what will soon be promised. At these stages, nothing appears unusual from an external perspective. Abram is part of a family, living in a settled region, with no indication that his role will be different from those before him. The world continues, as it has been developing since the flood nations forming, groups expanding, life moving forward. This matters because the shift that is about to occur does not come from the environment, comes through instruction. That instruction arrives in a direct and decisive form. Abram is told to leave his country, his people, and his father's household, and to go to a land that will be shown to him. This command is both specific and undefined at the same time. It requires immediate movement, but does not provide full detail about the destination. This matters because it introduces uncertainty into the process. The direction is clear, but the outcome is not yet visible. Alongside this command, a set of promises is given. Abram is told that he will become a great nation, that he will be blessed, that his name will be made great, and that through him all families of the earth will be blessed. These statements define the purpose behind the command to leave. This matters because it connects Abram's personal movement to a broader outcome that extends beyond his own life. At this moment, the tension becomes fully visible. Abram is called to become the origin of a great nation, yet he has no child. The promise and the present condition stand in direct contrast. This matters because it establishes the central conflict that will shape everything that follows. Abram responds without recorded hesitation. He leaves, taking Sarai, Lot, and everything they have, and begins the journey. This movement marks the beginning of a new direction, not just for Abram, but for the narrative itself. The next phase will follow this journey into the land of Canaan, examining the first challenges that arise and how the promise begins to unfold within real conditions. As Abram leaves Haran and begins the journey toward the land that has been promised, the narrative shifts from instruction to movement within real conditions. What had been spoken as direction now unfolds step by step across actual terrain, through actual decisions, and within a world that is already inhabited and structured. This matters because the promise does not exist in isolation. It begins to interact with reality. Abram arrives in the land of Canaan, moving through it rather than immediately settling in one defined place. The texts describe specific locations, marking his movement across the region. This is important because it shows that the promise of land is not fulfilled upon arrival. The land is seen, experienced, and crossed, but not yet possessed. This matters because it introduces a gap between presence and ownership. Another critical detail is introduced at this moment. The land is not empty. The Canaanites are already there. This means that the promise Abram has received exists within a space that is already occupied. This matters because it adds complexity to the fulfillment. The promise is not about discovering an unclaimed territory. It involves a future that will unfold within an already established world. At one of these points along the journey, God appears to Abram again and confirms the promise. This land will be given to his descendants. Abram responds by building an altar. This act is not functional. It is intentional. It marks the place of confirmation and establishes a pattern that will repeat throughout his journey. This matters because it shows that each step forward is acknowledged, even when the outcome is not yet visible. Abram continues moving, building another altar and calling upon the name of the Lord. These repeated actions create a rhythm movement, encounter, response. Yet despite this pattern, nothing changes in the visible sense of fulfillment. The land is still occupied, and Abram still has no child. This matters because it reinforces the tension between promise and present condition. Then, without warning, the first major challenge appears. A famine arises in the land. The same land that has just been identified as part of the promise is now unable to sustain life. This is a critical moment. It forces a decision that is not directly addressed by instruction. Abram must respond based on immediate necessity. This matters because it introduces the first situation where survival and promise appear to move in different directions. Abram chooses to go down to Egypt, a region known for its stability due to the Nile. This decision is practical, but it shifts him away from the land that had just been identified as his future. This matters because it highlights the tension between long-term promise and immediate need. The journey is no longer just about following direction. It now includes navigating circumstances that challenge that direction. As Abram approaches Egypt, another layer of complexity emerges. He anticipates that Sarai's appearance may place him at risk, and he instructs her to say that she is his sister. This decision is strategic, based on perceived danger, but it introduces a distortion of truth into the situation. This matters because it marks a shift from direct response to calculated action. Once inside Egypt, the situation unfolds as Abram expected. Sarai is taken into Pharaoh's household, and Abram receives wealth and resources as a result. On the surface, the outcome appears beneficial. However, it is built on a misrepresentation that has not yet been addressed. This matters because it introduces a pattern where immediate advantage masks underlying instability. That instability becomes visible when Pharaoh and his household are afflicted with plagues because of Sarai. This intervention exposes the situation and forces a resolution. Pharaoh confronts Abram, and the result is immediate removal. Abram is sent away, along with everything he has gained. This matters because it shows that actions taken to manage risk can produce consequences that require external correction. Abram returns to the region where he had previously built an altar, re-establishing connection with the earlier stage of his journey. This return is significant. It marks a movement back to alignment after a period of disruption. Yet, even now, the central promise remains unfulfilled. Abram is in the land, but does not possess it. He has gained resources, but still has no child. At this stage, the journey has moved beyond simple obedience into a more complex path, shaped by circumstance, decision, and consequence. The next phase will introduce a new tension, this time not from external conditions, but from within Abram's own household, as growth creates conflict and forces another defining decision. As Abram returns to the region between Bethel and Ai, re-establishing himself in the place where he had previously built an altar, the narrative enters a new phase, where the tension does not come from external crisis, but from internal growth. The famine has passed, the disruption in Egypt has been resolved, and Abram is once again positioned within the land connected to the promise. Yet, instead of immediate clarity or fulfillment, a different kind of pressure begins to emerge, one created by expansion itself. Both Abram and Lot now possess substantial resources. Their livestock, servants, and material wealth have increased to the point where the land can no longer sustain them together. This is a significant shift. Growth, which might be expected to reinforce stability, now introduces conflict. This matters because it shows that expansion, even when positive, creates limitations that must be addressed. The environment has boundaries, and those boundaries force decisions. The tension becomes visible through conflict between the herdsmen of Abram and the herdsmen of Lot. These are not isolated disagreements. They reflect a structural problem. The land cannot support both groups at the same time without strain. At the same time, the presence of other inhabitants in the land of Canaanites and parasites adds another layer of complexity. This is not an empty territory that can be freely divided without consequence. This matters because it shows that Abram's situation is shaped not only by his own growth, but by the broader context in which he exists. Abram addresses the situation directly, but in a way that reveals his priorities. Instead of asserting authority or claiming the best portion for himself, he proposes separation as a solution to conflict. He offers Lot the first choice of land. This is a decisive moment. Abram, who has received the promise, does not act to secure immediate advantage. This matters because it shows that his actions are not driven by visible gain, but by maintaining order and avoiding conflict. Lot's response reflects a different perspective. He looks toward the Jordan Valley and sees that it is well-watered, fertile, and capable of sustaining growth. The description of the region emphasizes its immediate value. It is compared to the land of Egypt, suggesting stability and abundance. From a practical standpoint, Lot chooses the option that appears most advantageous in the present. This matters because it establishes a contrast. One decision is based on long-term promise, the other on immediate visibility. However, the narrative introduces an important detail alongside this choice. The region includes cities such as Sodom, where the inhabitants are described as wicked. This information does not influence Lot's decision at the moment, but it defines the environment he is entering. This matters because it shows that visible advantage does not always include awareness of underlying conditions. With the separation complete, Abram remains in the land of Canaan, while Lot moves toward the cities of the plain. What appears at first as a division of resources becomes a division of direction. Abram is left in a position that may seem less favorable in the immediate sense, while Lot occupies land that appears more productive. This matters because it reinforces the difference between immediate outcome and long-term development. After Lot separates from Abram, the promise is reaffirmed and expanded. Abram is told to look in every direction, north, south, east, and west, and that all the land he sees will be given to him and his descendants. This statement is significant because it comes after the apparent loss of the most fertile region. It clarifies that the promise is not limited by what has been chosen or taken by others. This matters because it shifts the focus away from immediate possession and back to defined outcome. The promise is extended further with a description of Abram's future descendants. They are compared to the dust of the earth, emphasizing a number beyond calculation. This directly addresses the ongoing tension. Abram still has no child. The promise expands, even as the present condition remains unchanged. This matters because it maintains the gap between what is seen and what has been declared. Abram is then instructed to walk through the land, moving across it in its length and breadth. This action is both symbolic and practical. It does not transfer ownership in a visible sense, but it establishes presence and connection to the land that has been promised. Abram responds by relocating to Hebron and building another altar, continuing the pattern of acknowledgement that has defined his journey. At Istacheh, the separation between Abram and Lot has created two distinct paths. One is aligned with visible advantage but undefined consequences. The other remains connected to a promise that is still not fulfilled. The tension remains, but the direction is becoming clearer. The next phase will introduce a development that extends beyond Abram's household, a regional conflict that will draw him into a larger role, expanding his influence and further shaping his position within the land. After the separation between Abram and Lot establishes two distinct paths, the narrative expands once again beyond the boundaries of household and land into a wider regional context. Up to this point, Abram's journey has been shaped by movement, promise, internal decisions, and localized challenges. Now, external forces enter the synth forces that operate on a scale larger than anything Abram has yet faced. This matters because it places him within a broader world of power, conflict, and influence. The account introduces a coalition of kings who rule over multiple territories. For a period of time, several cities in the region, including Sodom, have been subject to these rulers. Eventually, these cities rebel, refusing to continue under that authority. This act of rebellion triggers a military response. A group of Eastern kings advances through the region, engaging in a series of campaigns that move from one territory to another, defeating multiple populations along the way. This matters because it establishes the scale of the conflict. It is not isolated, it is organized, coordinated, and widespread. As this advancing force reaches the cities of the plain, including Sodom, the conflict culminates in a decisive battle. The local kings are defeated, and the result is not only military loss, but the capture of people and resources. Among those taken as Lot, who had chosen to settle near these cities. This moment connects directly back to his earlier decision. The land that appeared most advantageous has now become the center of conflict. This matters because it reveals how choices made based on immediate benefit can lead into situations that carry unseen risk. News of Lot's capture reaches Abram, and his response marks a turning point in his role. Up to this moment, Abram has been a traveler, a settler, and a recipient of promise. Now, he acts as a leader within a larger conflict. He gathers a group of trained men born in his household, 380 in number, and prepares to pursue the invading forces. This is a significant detail. It shows that Abram's household is not only large, but organized and capable of coordinated action. This matters because it expands his position beyond survival into influence. Abram's approach is strategic. He does not engage in direct confrontation in the same manner as the earlier battle. Instead, he divides his forces and attacks at night, using timing and positioning to his advantage. This decision reflects planning and awareness rather than reaction. This matters because it shows that Abram is not acting impulsively. He is operating with intention within a complex situation. The outcome is decisive. Abram defeats the opposing forces, recovers the captured goods, and brings back Lot, along with all the people who had been taken. This result extends beyond personal recovery. It reverses the outcome of a regional conflict, at least in this specific instance. This matters because it demonstrates Abram's ability to act effectively beyond the boundaries of his immediate environment. After returning, Abram is met by two figures whose roles highlight different aspects of the situation. The first is the king of Sodom, representing the city that had been defeated and now restored. The second is Melchizedek, king of Salem, who is also described as a priest of God Most High. This introduction is brief, but significant. It connects Abram's actions to a recognition that extends beyond political structures. Melchizedek brings bread and wine and blesses Abram, acknowledging that his victory is not solely the result of human effort, but connected to a higher authority. Abram responds by giving a tenth of everything, establishing a pattern of acknowledgement tied to what has been gained. This matters because it reinforces that even in victory, Abram does not position himself as the ultimate source of the outcome. The king of Sodom then offers Abram the recovered goods, requesting only the return of the people. This presents Abram with an opportunity to gain materially from the situation. However, he refuses. He states that he does not want the king of Sodom to be able to say that he made Abram wealthy. This decision is critical. It separates Abram's position from external sources of gain and maintains the distinction between what comes through the promise and what comes through circumstance. At this stage, Abram's role has expanded significantly. He has moved from receiving a promise to acting within a complex world, engaging with conflict, leadership, and recognition. Yet, despite all of this, the central elements of the promise remain unresolved. He still does not possess the land, and he still has no child. The narrative now prepares to return to that central tension. The next phase will move back from external conflict to internal reality, focusing again on the promise of a descendant and introducing a formal covenant that will define how that promise unfolds over time. Act 7. The covenant and the test to the promise. After the events involving the regional conflict and Abram's unexpected role within it, the narrative shifts away from external movement and returns to the central tension that has remained unresolved from the beginning: the promise of a descendant. Abram has moved through the land, faced famine, made decisions under pressure, separated from Lot, and even intervened in a conflict that extended beyond his household. Yet despite all of this activity, one fact has not changed. He still has no child. This matters because it brings the focus back to the original contradiction between promise and reality. At these days, the form of interaction changes again. The text states that the word of the Lord comes to Abram in a vision. This is significant because it introduces a direct and personal form of communication that interrupts the normal flow of events. The message begins with reassurance. Abram is told not to fear, that he will be protected, and that his reward will be very great. This matters because it addresses both the uncertainty created by recent events and the ongoing delay of the promise. Abram responds in a way that is both direct and grounded in his current reality. He acknowledges the promise of reward, but immediately raises the issue that remains unresolved: he is still without a child. His response is not abstract. It is specific. He identifies Eliezer of Damascus, a servant within his household, as the one who would inherit everything if the situation remains unchanged. This matters because it shows how Abram is interpreting the promise through the lens of what is currently possible. From Abram's perspective, the absence of a biological heir requires an alternative solution. The structure of inheritance within his household would naturally pass to someone who is already present. This reasoning is consistent with the reality he is experiencing. This matters because it reveals the gap between divine promise and human expectation. Abram is not rejecting the promise, he is trying to understand how it can exist within the conditions he sees. The response that follows removes this ambiguity. Abram is told clearly that this servant will not be his heir. Instead, a son will come from his own body. This clarification is precise and leaves no room for reinterpretation. It defines the fulfillment in biological terms, narrowing the path through which the promise will unfold. This matters because it eliminates alternative explanations and reinforces that the outcome will not follow ordinary patterns of substitution. To reinforce this statement, Abram is brought outside and told to look toward the sky and count the stars. The number is beyond calculation, and he is told that his offspring will be like this. This moment is not only symbolic, it establishes scale. Abram, who currently has no child, is presented with a future that extends beyond measure. This matters because it intensifies the contrast between present condition and promised outcome. The narrative then records Abram's response in a concise but significant way. He believes, and this belief is counted to him as righteousness. This introduces a new dimension into the sequence. Up to this point, Abram's journey has been defined by movement and action. Now, it includes trust in something that has not yet occurred and cannot yet be explained through visible means. This matters because it shifts part of the process from action to internal alignment. The focus then returns to the promise of land. Abram is reminded that he has been brought out to inherit this land, and he asks how he will know that this will take place. This question is important. It is not a rejection of the promise, but a request for confirmation. It moves the discussion from statement to assurance. This matters because it leads directly into the next phase, where the promise will be formalized through a covenant. At this stage, the central tension remains fully intact. The promise has been clarified, expanded, and reinforced, but the visible reality has not changed. Abram still stands without a child, and the land remains unpossessed. The next phase will introduce the formal covenant, defining the structure, the timeline, and the conditions under which the promise will be fulfilled. Following Abram's question about how he will know that the promise of the land will be fulfilled, the narrative transitions into one of the most structured and formal moments in the entire sequence: the establishment of a covenant. Up to this point, the promise has been spoken, clarified, and reaffirmed. But now, it is about to be defined within a framework that gives it permanence and form. This matters because it moves the promise from declaration into binding structure. Abram is given specific instructions involving animals. He is told to bring a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a young pigeon. The larger animals are cut in half and arranged opposite each other, forming a pathway between them. This setup reflects a known form of covenant making in the ancient world, where agreements were marked by passing between divided pieces. This matters because it signals that what is about to occur is not symbolic. Alone, it follows a recognized structure that defines commitment. After preparing the animals, Abram waits. Time passes without immediate completion of the process, and during this waiting period, birds of prey descend upon the carcasses. Abram drives them away, maintaining the arrangement that has been set. This detail, though brief, is important. It shows that even within the preparation for a formal covenant, there is interruption that must be addressed. This matters because it reinforces the pattern seen throughout. The narrative progress is not always immediate, even when everything appears ready. As the sun begins to set, the atmosphere changes. Abram falls into a deep sleep, and a sense of dread and darkness comes over him. This shift is significant because it marks a transition from active participation to a controlled experience. The covenant is not completed through Abram's actions alone. This matters because it indicates that what is being established does not depend on equal contribution. Its fulfillment will not be sustained by Abram's ability to maintain it. Within this state, a message is delivered that introduces a timeline extending far beyond Abram's own life. He is told that his descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, or they will be oppressed for 400 years. This is a critical addition. It introduces a period of delay, hardship, and displacement within the process of fulfillment. This matters because it defines that the promise will not unfold directly or immediately. It will move through stages that include difficulty. The message continues by stating that the nation responsible for this oppression will be judged, and that Abram's descendants will come out with great possessions. This establishes a sequence: entry into a foreign land, prolonged oppression, and eventual release with increase. This matters because it structures the promise across generations, showing that fulfillment includes both loss and restoration. Abram himself is given a separate outcome. He is told that he will live a full life and die in peace, indicating that he will not personally experience the events described. This distinction matters because it separates personal experience from generational fulfillment. The promise is not limited to Abram's lifetime, it extends beyond it. Another key element is introduced regarding timing. It is stated that Abram's descendants will return in a later generation, because the iniquity of the current inhabitants has not yet reached its full measure. This connects the timeline not only to Abram's lineage, but also to the condition of others in the land. This matters because it shows that the delay is not arbitrary. It is part of a larger structure that includes multiple factors. As darkness fully settles, the covenant is enacted. A smoking firepot and a flaming torch pass between the pieces of the animals. In traditional agreements, both parties would pass through. But here the movement is represented in a way that places responsibility on the one establishing the covenant. This matters because it indicates that the fulfillment of the promise does not depend on Abram maintaining it through equal obligation. The terms of the covenant are then stated clearly. The land is defined in geographical terms, and the peoples currently inhabiting it are listed. This grounds the promise in a real and identifiable region. This matters because it removes abstraction. The promise is tied to a specific place, not an undefined concept. At T-stage, the covenant has been formally established. It includes a defined lineage, a structured timeline involving both hardship and eventual possession, and a specific territory. Yet despite this clarity, the visible reality has not changed. Abram still has no child. The next phase will return to this unresolved tension, showing how Abram and Sarai respond to the continued delay, and how that response introduces a new development that complicates the path of the promise. Following Abram's question about how he will know that the promise of the land will be fulfilled, The narrative transitions into one of the most structured and formal moments in the entire sequence, the establishment of a covenant. Up to this point, the promise has been spoken, clarified, and reaffirmed. But now, it is about to be defined within a framework that gives it permanence and form. This matters because it moves the promise from declaration into binding structure. Abram is given specific instructions involving animals. He is told to bring a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a young pigeon. The larger animals are cut in half and arranged opposite each other, forming a pathway between them. This setup reflects a known form of covenant making in the ancient world, where agreements were marked by passing between divided pieces. This matters because it signals that what is about to occur is not symbolic. Alone, it follows a recognized structure that defines commitment. After preparing the animals, Abram waits. Time passes without immediate completion of the process, and during this waiting period, birds of prey descend upon the carcasses. Abram drives them away, maintaining the arrangement that has been set. This detail, though brief, is important. It shows that even within the preparation for a formal covenant, there is interruption that must be addressed. This matters because it reinforces the pattern seen throughout. The narrative progress is not always immediate, even when everything appears ready. As the sun begins to set, the atmosphere changes. Abram falls into a deep sleep, and a sense of dread and darkness comes over him. This shift is significant because it marks a transition from active participation to a controlled experience. The covenant is not completed through Abram's actions alone. This matters because it indicates that what is being established does not depend on equal contribution. Its fulfillment will not be sustained by Abram's ability to maintain it. Within this state, a message is delivered that introduces a timeline extending far beyond Abram's own life. He is told that his descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, where they will be oppressed for 400 years. This is a critical addition. It introduces a period of delay, hardship, and displacement within the process of fulfillment. This matters because it defines that the promise will not unfold directly or immediately. It will move through stages that include difficulty. The message continues by stating that the nation responsible for this oppression will be judged, and that Abram's descendants will come out with great possessions. This establishes a sequence: entry into a foreign land, prolonged oppression, and eventual release with increase. This matters because it structures the promise across generations, showing that fulfillment includes both loss and restoration. Abram himself is given a separate outcome. He is told that he will live a full life and die in peace, indicating that he will not personally experience the events described. This distinction matters because it separates personal experience from generational fulfillment. The promise is not limited to Abram's lifetime, it extends beyond it. Another key element is introduced regarding timing. It is stated that Abram's descendants will return in a later generation, because the iniquity of the current inhabitants has not yet reached its full measure. This connects the timeline not only to Abram's lineage, but also to the condition of others in the land. This matters because it shows that the delay is not arbitrary. It is part of a larger structure that includes multiple factors. As darkness fully settles, the covenant is enacted. A smoking firepot and a flaming torch pass between the pieces of the animals. In traditional agreements, both parties would pass through. But here the movement is represented in a way that places responsibility on the one establishing the covenant. This matters because it indicates that the fulfillment of the promise does not depend on Abram maintaining it through equal obligation. The terms of the covenant are then stated clearly. The land is defined in geographical terms, and the peoples currently inhabiting it are listed. This grounds the promise in a real and identifiable region. This matters because it removes abstraction. The promise is tied to a specific place, not an undefined concept. At this stage, the covenant has been formally established. It includes a defined lineage, a structured timeline involving both hardship and eventual possession, and a specific territory. Yet despite this clarity, the visible reality is not changed. Till is no child. The next phase will return to this unresolved tension, showing how Abram and Sarai respond to the continued delay, and how that response introduces a new development that complicates the path of the promise. After the birth of Ishmael, the narrative introduces a long silence. 13 years pass without recorded events, and during that time, nothing appears to change in visible terms. Abram now has a son, and from a human perspective, the situation could be interpreted as resolved. This matters because it creates the impression that the promise may have already found its fulfillment, even though it has not been explicitly confirmed. When the narrative resumes, Abram is 99 years old, and the direction becomes clear again. God appears and reestablishes the covenant with a new level of precision. Abram's name is changed to Abraham, and Sarai's name to Sarah. These changes are not symbolic alone, they define identity in relation to the promise. This matters because the outcome is now being attached directly to who they are, not just to what has been said. The covenant is then specified without ambiguity. Sarah will bear a son, and through that son, the covenant will continue. This directly separates Isaac from Ishmael. Abraham responds with a mixture of recognition and disbelief, questioning how such an event could occur at their age. This matters because it reflects the tension between physical reality and defined promise. A sign of the covenant is also introduced: circumcision, establishing a visible and ongoing marker that applies to Abraham's household and future generations. This creates continuity, ensuring that the covenant is not only remembered but maintained over time. Ishmael is not excluded from development. He is promised growth and the formation of a great nation. However, the covenant itself is reserved for Isaac, who will be born within a defined time frame. At this stage, the distinction is complete. The promise is clarified, the line is established, and the timeline is set. What had remained uncertain is now defined. The next phase will move from promise to fulfillment. Act 8. The fulfillment and what the flood really changed. After the covenant is clarified, the identities redefined, and the timeline established, the narrative reaches a point where the long-standing tension finally resolves in visible form. What had been spoken, repeated, delayed, and questioned now moves into fulfillment. Sarah conceives and gives birth to Isaac at the time that had been specified. This moment is direct and without ambiguity. It matters because it closes the central gap that has existed throughout the entire sequence from promise to reality. The birth of Isaac does more than provide an heir, it confirms the structure that has been built across multiple phases. The distinction between what was attempted through human initiative and what was defined through the covenant becomes fully visible. Ishmael exists, his line continues, and his future is acknowledged, but Isaac is identified as the one through whom the covenant will proceed. This matters because it reinforces a consistent pattern. Not everything that develops replaces what was originally defined. At this stage, the narrative can be understood as a complete progression rather than a series of disconnected events. The world before the flood expanded rapidly, developed complexity, and reached a point where its condition led to total removal. The flood did not occur suddenly, it followed a structured buildup across generations. After the flood, the world was restored, but with defined boundaries that prevented the same type of global outcome from happening again. This matters because it shows continuity between destruction and limitation. Following the restoration, humanity began to expand again, but the direction of that expansion was altered through division of Bible. Unity gave way to dispersion, and the formation of nations began. From that broad development, the narrative narrowed to a single line through Abram. This shift is critical. It marks the transition from global history to a focused path that carries forward a specific purpose. The process that follows Abram is not immediate fulfillment, but structured delay. The promise of land and descendants is given, but it unfolds over time through stages that include movement, conflict, decision, and misalignment. This matters because it shows that fulfillment is not defined by speed, but by progression. The delay does not cancel the promise, it shapes how it is realized. At the same time, human action continues to influence the path. Decisions made under pressure, attempts to resolve tension through available means, and responses to circumstances all introduce complexity. Yet, despite these variations, the defined outcome remains consistent. This matters because it shows that while the path can change, the direction set at the beginning continues to hold. By the time Isaac is born, every major element has been established. The world has been created, developed, reset, expanded again, divided, and then redirected through a covenant line. What began as a global narrative now continues through a focused progression that will define everything that follows. The flood, therefore, is not only an event of destruction, it is a turning point that reshapes how the world functions. It establishes limits, introduces continuity, and sets the stage for a different kind of development. This matters because everything after the flood operates within the framework that it created. At this stage, the sequence is complete. The question is no longer what happened during the flood, but what the flood made possible and how its effects continue to shape the direction of everything that follows. If you followed this full breakdown step by step, take a moment to like the video and subscribe for more long-form biblical narratives. And before you go, leave a comment. Where are you watching from? What time is it there right now? And what part of this timeline changed the way you see the story the most? This is what really happened during the flood of Noah day. How it reshaped the world that came after.